Alright, let's get started. This is gonna be kind of a depressing one today, but I've had this on my mind for a while. It is kind of hard to put into words exactly what I'm talking about, so I'm gonna give it as good of a fucking shot as I can. When I was a kid, right, I grew up with autism spectrum disorder, kind of more mild, mild Tourette syndrome. That's what it says on the official diagnosis. I'm not just making that shit up. But bipolar disorder isn't something that I really learned I had until around like shit 23. I think it was when I joined the military. They finally told me. um, Now my psychiatrist had thought that I had it for a while, but it was not something we were really seeking help for at the time. But growing up with a plethora of neurological disorders means you don't always do the best in life. You know what I mean? I don't really expect to live a super long time because you don't really hear too much about people with that many disorders living to be old, And I'm kind of okay with that. Who knows? For all I know, just because I'm constantly depressed, I might as well live forever. Or at least it could feel like forever. But this is kind of blogging too much about my own life right now. We're actually going to talk about why you shouldn't do that. But I'm trying to give you some backstory so that you can kind of see how I came to this conclusion. Is So as a kid growing up with bipolar, you fuck around a lot, right? And teachers obviously always had to be, they had to like have special shit for me to move to a different room if I like started laughing uncontrollably like the Joker or some shit. That shit would happen basically. I wasn't really in control um, of my own mind, really, for lack of a better word. It's not like like a personality disorder where not only are you a cunt, but you choose actively to be a cunt. I tried not to be a shitty person, but it just kind of fucking happened. And it's a constant struggle. But uh, my teachers would get on my case for it. Then I would go hear about it at home from my parents, and then they would take me to a family therapist where my mom would tell the family therapist all the bullshit I did. And I knew that there was really no controlling it. So, for my perspective, I didn't really have a problem. But and the psychiatrist's advice was just stop doing whatever you're doing. And I'm like, yeah, I really wish I fucking could. It'd be really nice, wouldn't it, if I could just be normal? And that got really depressing, going through this loop of being on like stimulant medication, having a manic episode, doing some bullshit, and then hearing about it from three different people. And what would happen though is around the time I got into middle school, in like the 2000s, I think, there was a Facebook had just come out, and we were hearing about Facebook. YouTube was already kind of cool, but Facebook was just coming out, and as that got popular, uh, what I noticed as a kid was, this is a long time ago, but I still have vivid memories of this, of kind of the feeling that I had as parents would post all the good shit their kids did, right? And that was always cool. That was always a cool thing. But my mom didn't really have a lot to post, even though it was me and my brother. My brother would do a few things, but he didn't. He didn't really do a whole lot as a kid. So her feed would mostly be shit she did, really, and it always kind of frustrated me as a child knowing that I wasn't the successful one. My brother wasn't really super successful either. He's just getting by on sheer luck at this point. But I always kind of resented that people would. It kind of set a high level of expectation, and my parents would always push me to do more, and it just wasn't fucking working. No matter what I did, it wouldn't work out. So what would happen though is they would have these, you'd hear a lot about other people's accomplishments and how all your friends are now getting married, or they got high paying jobs now, or they're just barely paying rent, living with five other people, you know, and you're like, yeah, I'm just chilling at home. You know, I'm trying to fucking live my life as best I can, given I hate making excuses for it because it's not really something I can that you can put a label on and say this is why I can't do something. You know, it's not like I have a severely debilitating physical deformity or something, but anytime I try shit, it's not fucking working. You know, I always end up either trying to kill myself or ended up in a crisis center or something. It's a very weird existence where I can't hold anything for too long. And this is all again backstory to talk about the main point I'm saying, which is if you're if you're having a child, let's say, or even if you have a spouse or friends or something, if you can, I would avoid posting on social media about other people, because what it does is it sort of sets this, it's like an alternate world where the imperfections of your life don't really show up as much unless you're actively posting them yourself. But social media is more of a place where you post your wins, you know, your successes, your and it's kind of hard on people when, especially children growing up, where they might not be as good as the other kids. You know, they might just be barely scraping by, and they might have, again, not a physical deformity, but then that actually could be what it is. They might have, you know, they might be missing a leg, or they might have cerebral palsy, or they might, whatever it is, they're not, or maybe a mental disorder. They're struggling, and by having this constant influx of garbage of just people's random accomplishments, it sort of puts people on a pedestal and puts anybody else that can't accomplish these things very, you know, down. And I think that it's kind of a harmful place to put, especially your children, is in a place where they are competing against other children for the not satisfaction, yeah, I guess, satisfaction of their own parents. You know, it's hard living up to that standard when social media filters every bad thing that happens in your life. You're not going to hear about, you know, that horrible divorce you're going through. You're not going to hear about failing, you know, flunking out of college. You're going to only hear about the good things that happen. And it gives you this very unrealistic expectation of the world around you and your own abilities when you're constantly competing with literal perfection. And I think this leads to a lot of children growing up with like a, you know, with like this perfectionist attitude. And it's something that I've had to kind of just shrug off and say, you know, I might not be the most successful person ever. If you're ever looking for some way to punch down, you know, if you're like, I want to hear about life from somebody that's a total fucking loser so that I don't feel like I'm being preached to by a successful person, I'm your fucking guy. And I don't really have much of a future, and I don't really plan on having a future. So this has kind of led me to seek other like philosophies, you know, of living a simpler life and just kind of having what you need to get by, you know. And if I can manage that, if I can just fucking live at this point, I'll be a lot more satisfied than if I was getting a high paying job working for Google or whatever, you know. It's just not, success has never been a valid indicator of, well, actually success, you know, of value. It's never been something that I treated as part of my value, and I sort of resent that we have this accomplishment focus society, basically, where if you're not constantly achieving something, you're being, you know, you're a loser, you're being left out. And this is not something I really ever cared about, you know. But that's kind of what I wanted to say, is that when we're posting about other people's lives, it's important to remember how that may affect the people that you're posting about. And that's why I always advise people, just don't tell me about your fucking kids. I don't want to fucking know about them. I would rather that be a fucking mystery. I don't really care about people's lives at this point, because the more that they talk about their lives, I always feel like that's sort of debilitating, is that it's not, it's really not something I care about. For one, I mean, I'm just gonna be real. But it's also like they're kind of, it's hard to say like why talking about the good things that happen in your life is not like something that you probably should be doing. And that's kind of a weird thing. It's kind of a weird position to have, because obviously that would only be coming from somebody that's got a very fucking depressing life, you know. But I do think that it's harmful to the people that we're talking about, and that it does leave them with a sense of living up to unreasonable expectations. Just for a bit more backstory, I had this one point where I did actually have a long term job, and anytime I told my dad about it, he would say, "Why aren't you working more hours? Why can't you get a second job?" And eventually, I just quit. I said, "Fuck it," I was like, "Man, I'm not fucking dealing with this anymore." If one job isn't enough, and I could barely handle that, I actually ended up quitting it again a few months ago. It just got to be way too much, and my dad was obviously really pissed off about that. So now he's gonna send me to fucking whatever it's called, Outward Bound or whatever, uh, so I can fucking live on my own for a bit and stop hogging up his air or whatever. So this ended up being more of a spiel about myself than it did about the subject of the video, but I do feel like, and the more I hear about it, of children kind of being resentful of social media, where they're not, they don't feel like what their parents are posting about them is appropriate. It's not, because you don't have consent in that. If your parents want to post something about you, what the fuck are you gonna do about it? You're a kid. And I always hated when my parents would post about me on social media. I hated it being out there. I hated my life being on display, and I think a lot more people are waking up to that. So, I mean, like, you don't really think about it when you're online, is like how what you're doing is affecting people mentally, and that's something that I don't think we'll understand for a long time, until the social media bubble crashes. And it already kind of is. People are starting to move away from big social media companies to smaller group chats, like Discord or not TikTok, because that's a video sharing platform, but or like Facebook Messenger was the other one. I think people are starting to move to like Mastodon, Matrix, Telegram, that kind of shit. They want to talk just to their friends. They don't want their entire lives being on display. And I think that that's sort of a shift in mindset from this previous generation of, like half a generation of posting your entire life for the world to see. I always found the concept really irritating and annoying, and I never posted about my own life on social media. I was always posting like a project I was working on, and I just wanted people to see, or I was just talking to people, or I like post jokes that I found. It was never supposed to be about me, because I knew that as soon as I started posting about myself, I would be putting myself on a pedestal and competing with other people, and that just never sat right with me. So you know that's something to think about, is like how I've said enough on this subject. I think that's about enough. Thanks.